All right. So question number 2 is, I have a small youth group. How can I gain momentum? Well, it's a good question because it's hard. It's if you have a small youth group, and I have a small youth group, I have 7, 8 students, and I love my students. If my students should ever see this, know this: I love you. You guys are awesome. Can't wait to see you tonight. And I think the deal is this: if you're having trouble, and I wrote this down, so I'm going to read some of this because I have thoughts and opinions. And here's what I wrote down. Somebody, you can take it as a motivational statement, or you can take it as a word from the Lord some way. Okay, and I wrote down: the time for safety is over. Safe is overrated. And I say that because if you have a small youth group, 7 to 8 students, and let's say some of them play sports, and they're missing, if you have a small youth group, 7 to 8, and they're missing Wednesday nights because of sports, because of other things, and some nights you have 2, and sometimes you have 4, and sometimes you have 6, and sometimes you have 1, it happens. I understand. I promise. And it's super difficult to maintain any type of consistency because you're having to train and move around the numbers you have. But I would say that no matter what your numbers are, you have to show up, be a youth pastor. Be a youth pastor of that 1. Until you're ready to be a youth pastor of 1, you can't be youth pastor of 100. Okay? If you can't be youth pastor for 1, you can't be youth pastor for 100. And I'm not saying God's going to give you 100 students. I'm just saying be youth pastor for 1. Be youth pastor for 1. If you can do that, you're good. But I think, here's where my answer comes in. I think it might be time, if you're running into that brick wall, I think it's time to have a meeting with parents and your pastor. Because you have to ask, do parents understand the goals of the youth ministry? Does the pastor know and understand the goals of the youth ministry? Does the church know the goals and the plans of the youth ministry? Okay? There's no shame in asking for help. Because if you're reaching a point where now you can't, you're just not, it's just, every week is sadness, and you're just sad because you can't get the momentum, or you can't get enough kids, or you can't do enough this. It's time to have a meeting. It's time to gather people up and say, I need help. I am lost in the weeds here, okay? And we got to get on the same page. What can we do to, first of all, pour into our students? Before we reach out to other kids, how can we pour into our kids? How can we pour into these students? How can we build consistency among the students we have? Because if we're reaching other people, I don't think it's going to matter. You can gain all these other kids, but it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be what you think. I think, you'll get them, but man, the kids you start out with, those are the kids, man. Those are the students you've started with. And quite frankly, the students you're probably hired to minister to in the first place. So I would say this: you got to have a meeting, pastor, parents, church board, whoever you got to have. And you have to be able to come up with a standard. You have to be able to come up with, do we need to change the youth night of the week? Is it a night of the week problem? And you're talking about practical issues. We're not talking about blame. We're not blaming parents. We're not blaming students. We're not blaming people. We're saying what is best for our students and how can we build just consistency. Just consistency. That's all I'm looking for. We're not looking for super powerful growth here. We're not looking for 500 kids. We're saying, look, how can we make this adaptable, build our youth program around the students we have currently to be able to find momentum with the kids we have? Because it's really, I think, this is super opinionated here, but I think that disciples are made not by just reaching out. I think we do our students a disservice by saying, we're going to grow this youth ministry, and then you get to hang out with a bunch of kids. If you have a small youth group, be thankful. because you're getting to tell your students things personal, up close and personal. It says, look, discipleship happens if this youth, look how the church grew in the first century. Look how the church grew and people got saved at the preaching of the gospel. People were changed, and then they found a community to be a part of. And so when students understand that, and you're teaching that, first of all, it's not super sexy. It's just not, and kids aren't like, woo, discipleship. But yet that's where it is. Okay? That's where it is. It's students reaching students. It's not you reaching students. It's you teaching them how to reach their friends for Christ. It's you trying to teach them how to communicate the gospel for themselves. And that's why we have problems in the church. It's what discipleship is. It's working. It's putting in time. It's building relationships. It's all the things. And so, I think that's where we got to go. And we do our students a disservice by not teaching them to reach their own friends. We go out and reach friends, but our students have learned nothing about discipleship. They've learned nothing about communicating the gospel to their friends. They know nothing about walking with their friends in the midst of their mess. And I think we have to do that. And if you have a small youth group, it's really good to do that. It's really good to do that with your students. So that is my encouragement. If you have a small youth group and you're having trouble maintaining or gaining momentum, time to have a meeting. Time to talk about it. Because otherwise you're judged on your performance as a youth pastor. You can't get it done. Well, it's time to call on the other players. Listen, football teams don't win or lose with one guy. It's a team effort. The youth ministry isn't failing because you're failing. The youth ministry is failing for 1,000 other reasons. It's not just because of you. So if you think it's just your fault, I'm just telling you it's not completely your fault. You may be part of it. I'm not excusing you. I'm just saying that it does not rise or fall upon you, the individual leader, in the sense of how the youth ministry grows. You're the leader. You got to be the leader. But the success of your youth ministry is not entirely upon you. It is upon the church. And the church has to come in. Other people, and by the church, I mean other people, the pastor, the parents, church board, whoever it is, and say, how do we help you, youth pastor? What do we have to do to make this work? And that's the deal. That's the deal.